Um, so let's, as I kind of move to the end of this theory bit, and hopefully you're hanging in there, I want to just kind of highlight some examples that we know really well of successful phase shifts, successful emergences. So we talked on the left side of this slide, we already talked about kind of the Western understanding of evolution and how there's these phase shifts, first from the bacteria, phase shifting into nucleated cells, from crisis to breakthrough to a new synergy, a new complexity. And then again, something similar happened there, and the cells came together collectively and developed multicellular organisms. Again, on the verge of crisis, breakdown, we have a breakthrough to another order of complexity. So we see that in evolution. One of my favorites is the butterfly, which is just a butterfly. A lot of insects metamorphosize, but if you think of what happens in the case of a butterfly, it starts as a caterpillar. And caterpillars are voracious, right? They just, if you've ever gotten into gardening or farming, they just eat and eat and eat. Very destructive, and they really don't give much back at all. And if the caterpillar stopped and never became a butterfly, it would be a terminating species. It has to give back. It doesn't give much back in that stage. But what happens at some point, of course, it creates a chrysalis, and it goes through a profound disintegration. It doesn't just grow wings and legs and become a butterfly. Actually, the very first thing it has to do is completely disintegrate, or almost completely disintegrate, into just a goo. And within that goo, there are these imaginal cells, which it seems like, and again, very mysterious in many ways, but there's these certain cells that seem to have a vision of butterfly. They seem to know, they have this sense and a vision and a movement towards the idea of butterfly, whereas the rest of the cells don't have that. And at first, those cells, the imaginal cells, kind of take charge. They assist with the breaking down, and they assist with trying to reorganize towards butterfly, and the other cells actually attack them. The immune system of the caterpillars attacks these imaginal cells. They're like, what are you doing? You're killing us. But they don't see the big picture yet. And the imaginal cells eventually entrain the other cells. They entrain them and go, no, look, butterfly. Eventually all the cells get on board, and then it reorganizes into a new organism that we call butterfly. And what's really cool about this is a butterfly doesn't eat much at all. In fact, it's a pollinator. And it pollinates the very same plants that the caterpillars devastated. So it actually gives back. If you look at the hero's journey, it atones for the harm that it did as a caterpillar by pollinating the very same plants and helping them to thrive again. So it's no longer a self-terminating species because of that second really important cycle of its life. Now, if we can look at the same idea of emergence in like ecosystems in general. So when a climax, a very healthy, thriving ecosystem like a forest is chopped down, turned into a parking lot or forest fire, the very first thing that happens is more sunlight becomes available. And so these other plants that have been dormant for a long time, think plants we typically call weeds, thrive. And what do weeds do? Well, they tend to be poisonous or prickly, right? That's why we don't like them. They kind of proliferate really fast. But what they're actually doing is they're putting down taproots to draw minerals from deep in the earth. They're fixating nitrogen from the atmosphere. And they're actually setting the stage for the more fragile climax species to eventually come through. And when the climax species come through, they'll eventually shade out the so-called weeds. The better term is pioneer species. Shade out the pioneer species, and the pioneer species once again go dormant, waiting for the next time there's a fire or disruption. So again, it's another really great example of emergence, I think. And then my favorite example, just because it's something I did my own doctoral dissertation on, and it's kind of my livelihood in many ways, is human crisis. So when an individual human being goes through profound trauma, profound crisis, what we find is there's some aspect of their psyche, kind of like the imaginal cells, that initiate a kind of breakdown process. It disorganizes the entire worldview and experience of this person. In extreme cases like psychosis or spiritual emergency, can actually disintegrate. And it can be very terrifying and confusing initially. But if the process is supported properly and kept safe, and the person's held with enough safety and empathy and all of that, then a reorganization to a much healthier worldview and a healthier way of being emerges. And so this is what I did my own research on in my book, Rethinking Madness, talk a lot about this. But we see it in trauma recovery, same thing. People go through severe trauma. There can be a real breakdown, a lot of pain, disintegration of worldview and self. But then if it's supported to move through, they'll come out the other side healthier than when it started in many cases. So I think I'm gonna start time 2:52. Okay, so I'll do a few more slides here and then we'll take a little break. Okay, so that was kind of, I want to give some real key frames of principles, concepts that I think helps us situate ourselves in the present crisis that we're in globally. And while also looking at the dark side, right, the disintegration and the pain and the fear and everything, and the uncertainty with that, there's also this possibility, and we see it everywhere within the fabric of life, this creative potential for emergence, for using breakdown as opportunity for breaking through. So if we want to start from that idea, that concept, and ask ourselves, so what can we actually do individually and collectively to support that along? So what I say is, well, first of all, let's actually just learn from other successful emergences. So what do we find when we look at other emergence processes happening presently or evolutionarily? The first thing is, I would say, is actually leave it alone, right? There's a very deep wisdom happening here, organismic wisdom. It's so much broader than what our intellectual minds can really grasp. It's in us, sure, but it's typically unconscious. It's in the same way that I'm not conscious of all the wisdom in my own body right now. There's so much metabolism and heart pumping and breathing and you name it, digestion. And consciously, I have no idea. And thank God, I'd hate to be in charge of all that, consciously. But yet the wisdom's there, isn't it? And it's the same thing when we're talking on, on other living systems and organisms and whatnot. The wisdom's there. And the best thing we can actually do when it comes to actually like reparation of the earth and ecosystems and things like that is actually leave it alone, right? It has what it needs. The intrinsic wisdom's already there. And very closely related to that is working what we do decide to do, like when we do decide to contribute to the well-being of an ecosystem or the environment or another human being or even ourselves, is work with organismic wisdom. So yeah, it's true. Human beings have developed a very awesome form of intelligence. We have big brains, especially our prefrontal cortices and frontal lobes, and this capacity, and we have opposable thumbs, and we stand upright. So we have this capacity to think and plan and analyze and take the past and imagine the future. All this in a way that probably a lot of other organisms can't do to the extent that we can, which is really cool. But again, that's just a tip. That intellect's a tip of a much larger, iceberg of wisdom. So how can we actually work? What is the actual organismic process wanting to do, and how can I actually support that rather than just coming in and taking over and interfering? So we see a lot of this in conservation management, things like that, where we try to, have good intentions, we actually often end up causing more harm. And closely related, another lesson, snap out of our delusion of separateness. So this is actually acknowledging that we've been conditioned, virtually all of us, unless you're a very rare person, who was raised in one of the very last indigenous societies, if there are any left, that hasn't really been touched by Western contemporary society. We've been conditioned that we're somehow separate from nature. There's something special about humans that sets us above and beyond the domain of nature, and we can see where that's gotten us. So we have to realize, okay, I'm conditioned. I mean, I said it for myself, I'm conditioned to believe that too, and it actually takes work. We have to strive against that worldview to actively reconnect with other species, my own essential self, other humans, other species on the earth. To really making the effort to cultivate those qualities. And if we think about the idea of synergy, right, we're going from disintegration to think about, the insecure attachments of that, right? There's fear, there's greed, there's hatred, right? Scarcity, and we need to go into a new synergy. And what are the feelings and inner worldview of that? It's about generosity, abundance, love, and compassion, sense of connection with other living beings in the earth. So actually cultivating those synergistic feelings, and reconfiguring our social and economic systems so that they're in line with these qualities. Because right now they're diametrically opposed to synergy, if you look at our mainstream economic and social systems for the most part. And another really important piece here is understand that we're at different developmental stages. So we're all dealt different, different hand, so to speak, when we're born into this world. Different degrees of privilege, versus disability or lack of privilege. And so we each are simply doing the best we can with the hand that we were dealt. And so as we start to maybe develop more awareness and, of what things we're talking about here, it can be easy, and I'm certainly guilty of this as well, it can be easy to look at other people that are doing harmful things and get really judgmental. What are you doing? Can't you see the harm you're causing? And to recognize, well, first of all, it's impossible to be alive in this world without doing some kinds of harms. Like, it's just part of existence. However, we can try to live in such a way where we balance that with what we give back, of course. And second of all, people, again, they're at different states. So many people, probably most people, sadly, are still at a state where they're just really oblivious to a lot of what we're talking about here. They haven't made the connections yet. So rather than have judgment or anger or even hatred towards people who are doing harmful things, can we have some understanding, compassion? Hey, this person's doing the best we can. Maybe I can try to support them or educate them or something like that. So we're on the theme of, well, what can we do? And we talked about, first of all, try to learn from, if we're going to facilitate our own phase shift, whether it's on a personal level or collective level, humanity, learning from the other. I'm using the word phase shift and emergence, basically, kind of synonymously. But look at the other phase shifts, the other emergences that we've seen throughout other living systems in our own evolution. So the second thing is actually changing our own mind, body, heart state. So kind of drawing from Einstein's famous quote, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So if we maintain the same mind, body, heart state as we've had, we're likely just to keep on going down the same path that we've been going down. So again, looking very collectively, very generalized here. I know it varies a lot from person to person, but this is collectively where we're at. And for the most part, the predominant sort of attitude, identity, and behaviors is around these kinds of belief systems, right? So we're the most superior / intelligent species, and of course it even extends within our own species, most superior intelligent race, gender, etc. And so how do you actually have any kind of synergistic relationship with another with this attitude, right? You can't really. If I'm better than you, then how are we really going to meet and have a power with kind of relationship? We made it to the top of the food chain. It's another one. Sure, we're very powerful and we can kill pretty much anything or anyone we want to, no doubt we can do that. But again, we're heading off the cliff. And we've got to the point where if we continue to treat, other earthlings, etc., just because we can easily kill them and exploit them, then that means we should. Well, that's where it's gotten us. So this is realizing, okay, we can do that, but if we actually want to return to a synergistic, harmonious relationship with the earth, then we're going to have to kind of drop back down. Basically, our love and compassion is going to have to be stronger than our power. And the other is very closely related, right? We have dominion over nature. So even the one we're stewards of nature, I think is another one. It seems on the surface like, it's very noble. Oh, we're stewards of nature. But when you actually dive a little deeper, Gaia has been here, as far as we know, there's been life on this planet for about 3.8 billion years. And humankind is only got here 50,000 years. Homo sapiens only got here about 50,000 years ago. So if Gaia was, let's say she was an 85-year-old woman, humankind showed up yesterday. So does she really need us to steward her? I don't think so. What we need to do is steward ourselves, right? That's what we need to do. Steward ourselves. Gaia's done just fine without us. Thank you very much. But so that same attitude of we know better than the natural world really isn't much better than the other ones. So I've already shown you this slide before. Just again, kind of this is where we're at least how I see where we're at with this sort of vicious cycle heading towards termination, heading off that cliff. And this is kind of where I think we want to be heading. We want to be heading towards from attitudes that promote disintegration to attitudes that promote synergy, and actively cultivating those. So these are things, these are a list I've come up with. Maybe you can think of your own, see if you resonate with these, or what else you might add to this. All living beings are equally valuable members of the Gaian system. It's kind of like, it's like if my liver and my heart get in an argument over which one's more important, right? Actually, no, they're both important. So all of the systems and beings that are here now, they've evolved as part of the Gaian system. We need to sort of honor, the value. And if anything, some systems we could say are actually more important. They're not like, and humans certainly aren't at the top of the list. So Gaia could probably do pretty okay if humans were to suddenly vanish. Whereas if, the coral reefs or the Amazon, something like that, were to suddenly vanish, she would struggle. And the other one I was saying is our love and wisdom must exceed our power. We're very powerful. That's what these, powerful prefrontal cortices and opposable thumbs and upright posture have given us. They've given us a lot of power. Power basically just means the capacity to harness resources to meet needs, like just in a neutral definition of power. And so all living beings and living systems need to have a certain amount of power. It's important to be able to try to harness resources to meet needs, of course. But we've developed such an imbalanced degree of power, and coming from that stance of disorder, of constricted selfhood, it's further, it's causing that kind of cancerous analogy we talked about earlier. And so our love and our wisdom have to exceed that. And what that actually means, like on a more practical level, is every action that I take, because I'm powerful as a single human being, I have a fair amount of power. Obviously it varies from one, whether you're white or male or rich or whatever, it can vary a fair bit. And as a human species, we have a lot of power. So every action I take, to actually just be aware of that. Like everything I do has a consequence, and do I want to support that? Every dollar I spend, do I want to? It's going to have a consequence. Do I want to support that particular industry or whatever? Another one here: Gaia's intelligence and wisdom far exceed what our conscious intellects can ever grasp. So, like we've been talking about. So what that means is about moving towards humility. There's so much that we just don't understand, and it really could probably never grasp. So complex, the whole system, living system of this earth is so complex, and yet it's been organized for billions of years, self-organized as a living organism. And so how do I work in harmony with that? If I think about this organism, like I said before, it's so complex, all the metabolism and cardiovascular and immune systems. Can you imagine trying to manage all that with your conscious mind? Nobody can do that, right? But what I can do is work with it by providing the proper nutrients that my body needs, and the exercise and rest, etc. So I work in harmony with the wisdom of my body to keep it healthy. But if I try to take over totally, it's not going to work, is it? So the same thing as humans. We can't just take over functioning of this earth, but what we can do is work in harmony with it. So this is kind of a slide of a reinforcing cycle of connection and kindness. So it's the reverse, kind of a reverse of that earlier slide I showed you, of coming out of the disintegration, moving towards synergy. And notice I put individuals on top now instead of society. Because I think our society has become so entrenched in these norms of disintegration, et cetera, and most likely it's going to have to be kind of grassroots. It's going to have to probably take individuals that are kind of waking up to this more expanded experience of self and deeper connection with fellow earthlings and earth, that are in turn going to have to feedback, give their gifts and contributions to society, which will in turn can foster more individuals coming through that have this more synergistic and harmonious way of living. And then the inner cycle there is, as we actively cultivate that inner increasing connection with others, that expanded experience of self, I'm naturally going to feel kind and compassion towards others because, they're, after all, they're part of me. I want to take care of them just like I want to take care of me. So as the sense of self expands, we naturally start to feel kindness, compassion towards the others, and which in turn increases connection. So now we have a self-reinforcing cycle, returning us back to a sustainable place in the Gaian system. And for those who prefer, who are more visually oriented, I just wanted to bring this picture in by Alex Gray, who I really like. I think he captures a lot of this stuff really well in one image. We're at this choice point, and kind of in the middle. We've been heading to the right side of it in this image, disintegration. separation and all of that, and how can we start to bring our balance back towards more healthy living, wholesome living. Okay, so specific actions we can take. What does it actually look like? Like, here I am, I'm a human being, I want to make a difference. What can I actually do? So first of all, recognizing, because of the interdependence, interconnectedness of all the different sort of layers of self, of the whole being, personal resource and healing, Earth's resource and healing, and humankind's resource and healing are all, like, inextricably connected. So whether we're social workers or counselors or therapists, or just simply, a caring human being with whatever work we might be doing, recognizing that they're all connected. And if we focus, if I just try to focus on the well-being of a person, I mean, yeah, sure, it's a lot of our professions of what we do, but if we neglect the other domains, then the person's never really going to experience true well-being. How can you experience true well-being in a totally broken family or society, or of course the earth? When the earth is totally broken, the biosphere, then we're all in big trouble. So what does that actually look like? So I'm going to just go through a few exercises that most of them are pretty well known, but ways of actively cultivating synergistic feelings. So I keep using the word synergy, or the idea of synergy is, the coming together, the recognition of deep interdependence and interconnectedness. And when we put that on an actual feeling level, that's things like when you feel love, like if you feel love for another person or an animal or something like that, you naturally feel connection with them, right? So that's the idea of, like, somehow there's a feeling of, I get them, I can empathize, I can feel what it's like for that person on some level. I feel connected to them. And when you feel connected, you naturally feel these other synergistic feelings: love, compassion, care, kindness. So one of the first things that we have to do, or I would say the first thing really, is develop a synergistic relationship with our own essential self. So many of us have come up in a dysfunctional society, and often families more or less dysfunctional within that. And part of that is we end up with not very healthy relations with our own essential self. And so this is where the practice of mindfulness, I think, is really wonderful. It's been around for thousands of years. And it's not sectarian. It's just simply, can I connect to my own here and now experience with an attitude of curiosity? What's going on inside of me right now? What are my feelings, sensations, impulses, thoughts? Openness. Okay, interesting. Can I just be open? This is what's here. It's what's here. Can I allow the different inner experiences to just be as they are? And can I be kind? These are the kind of qualities when we talk about mindfulness that we're trying to cultivate. And as we do that, we basically develop a secure, Dan Siegel, he's a neurologist, psychiatrist, and mindfulness teacher, talks a lot about the idea that mindfulness is akin to developing a secure attachment with your own essential self. And you have to start there before you can really develop secure connections with others. So I'm going to walk you now on just a little bit of a guided meditation, which is going to take us into the next step as well. So take a moment and just check into your posture and find one that feels comfortable yet alert. Decide what you like to do with your eyes. You can either close them or lower them with a soft gaze. And just gently now turning your attention to your inner world. So you can begin kind of on the surface, feeling the contact points of your body against whatever you're sitting on. Just allowing whatever sounds you hear around you just to come into your ears, just simply receiving them openly. Letting go of doing and just being receptive and open to what is moment to moment. Let's just kind of bring some curious attention to different categories of our experience in this moment right now. So you can notice your breath. So the breath is a bridge between mind and body in many ways, because we have conscious control over it, but it's also unconscious. And it represents my internal state. If I'm really agitated, my breath is going to get faster. If I'm relaxed, calmer. So just tune into your breath as it is in this moment. Be curious and open to that. And just notice other internal sensations. See if you can just be curious and open, kind of do a little quick body scan. What are the other sensations in my body right now? Are there some that are pleasant, maybe some that are unpleasant, neutral? Can I just allow them to be as they are in this moment? And along with these feelings, just be curious about the emotional charge, what we often call the emotional felt sense, how it actually lives in the body. You may or may not be able to name a particular emotion right now, and that's totally fine, but just the general quality of emotion that's subtle or intense in this moment. Just open, curious, allowing. And we can take a moment just to, without losing our seat in our body, like sitting on the bank of a river, just observe the contents of the mind. There might be certain thoughts or hopes or fears, maybe memories or images. I'm going to invite you to shift slightly. So just really put your attention on whatever sensations are in your inner world right now. It's like subtle or intense, whatever you notice, kind of the general inner experience, sensations, feeling. I want you to bring in mind a being, it could be a person or a companion animal that you feel affection towards right now. You just feel a natural affinity towards or love towards in some way. So bring this being into your mind. Imagine their presence. Allow yourself to really feel love, kindness towards this person. And you can even say, kind of internally and silently, towards this person, may you be happy. And as you kind of imagine these words, sending these words, may you be happy. See if you can actually feel the quality of that in your own body. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you be free. If you can, again, just trying to actually feel rather than just say the words, kind of feel them and imagine extending them towards this person or animal, this being. Now imagine your young self. Bring into your mind's eye or however you can imagine this young child, like 3 or 4 years old, this young you, still so fresh in the world. And extending to this young little being, may you be happy. Really feeling that. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you be free. And then bringing your attention to yourself here and now, your adult self right now, sitting wherever you're sitting. May I be happy. And the same thing, see if you can just feel into these words, may I be happy. Feel the sensations of that in your body, the feeling. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. May I be free. And now we're going to just push the edges a little. And for some, you might have already been pushing the edges. Imagine someone you feel a little bit of difficult feelings towards. So not somebody too difficult, but there's a little bit of edge there. Maybe a family member, loved one, or it can be like a politician or something like that. It's someone that you have some difficult feelings towards. Just bring your awareness to them. See if you can extend the same feelings towards this person. May you be happy. So see if can you see the humanity underneath whatever it is that's bothering you about them. Just they're a human being too, with their own hopes and fears and difficulties, confusions. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you be free. And then extend your awareness to include all human beings on this planet. All nearly 8 billion of us, right? The sea of humans across the entire landscape of this planet. Each one of them struggling with a lot of the similar things we struggle with, certain hopes and fears and challenges and stresses. So extending out to all humans, may you be happy. May all humans be happy. Yeah. May all humans be healthy, peaceful, free. And then one last expansion, all beings, all living beings, animate, inanimate, may all beings be happy. Really trying to, again, cultivate this feeling quality of this as you say these words. May all be happy, feeling that in your body in some way. May all be healthy, peaceful, free. And then just gently bringing your attention back to yourself here in this chair or wherever you're sitting. Beginning to make the journey to the external world. So once again, just hearing the sounds around you, sensing the other people here with you. And then when you're ready, you can come on back. So that was just an example. That actually comes from that particular practice is a modified version of something called metta or maitri. It comes from the Buddhist tradition, but most spiritual traditions have something kind of similar. And it's actually been research showing that doing so mindfulness itself has had clear benefits towards well-being, mental, physical well-being, and then metta as well has had further benefits. So even on a very personal level, there's a lot of benefits to doing a practice like this, but when we actually look at where we're at and what we've been talking about, these kinds of practices aren't just kind of a luxury, they're kind of a necessity, really. Like we have to actively cultivate on some way, whatever works for us, cultivate these kinds of feelings towards our own essential self and others.